In the peaceful town of Cedar Falls, life moved at a slow and steady pace. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name. Children played freely in the parks, and weekend barbecues were a regular occurrence. Nestled within this picture-perfect suburb stood a small white house with green shutters, belonging to the Thompson family. To outsiders, Laura and Peter Thompson seemed to have it all: a happy marriage, 2 healthy children, and a life that many envied. But what no one knew was that inside those walls, something dark was quietly brewing. Something that even Laura herself didn't understand. Laura was 36 years old, a registered nurse who worked long night shifts at the local hospital. She was known for her kind smile and patient nature. Colleagues often said she was the type of nurse every patient wished for: calm, attentive, and compassionate. Yet behind her calm demeanor, Laura struggled with the constant weight of exhaustion and stress. Long hours, sleepless nights, and the constant demands of raising 2 young children drained her in ways she couldn't explain to anyone. She rarely spoke about her feelings, not even to Peter. In her mind, complaining felt like weakness. She convinced herself that every mother felt this way. Peter Thompson, her husband, was 39 years old and worked as an accountant. Unlike Laura's chaotic hospital shifts, Peter's life was structured and predictable. He worked from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and spent his evenings helping Emily with her schoolwork or playing with Jake. He was known in the neighborhood as a dependable man, a quiet figure who kept to himself but never hesitated to lend a hand when asked. To Laura, Peter once represented safety and stability. But over the years, she started feeling disconnected from him. Conversations became brief. Touches grew cold. Yet Laura never allowed herself to dwell on these thoughts for long. Life was busy, and there simply wasn't time to worry about emotions. Their 2 children, Emily and Jake, were the light of Laura's life. Emily, their 9-year-old daughter, was smart and curious. She loved drawing pictures of animals and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian one day. Jake, at just 4 years old, was still in that phase of childhood where every small discovery felt like magic. Laura cherished her children. Every morning before her shifts, she would prepare their lunches with care, slipping little handwritten notes of encouragement into Emily's lunchbox. Despite her own fatigue, she found energy when it came to her kids. They were, in her mind, the only thing she had truly done right in her life. To outsiders, everything looked normal. The Thompsons attended church on Sundays. Laura hosted playdates. For Emily, Peter volunteered as a coach for the local soccer team. Friends and neighbors often commented on how close-knit and happy the family appeared. Even Laura believed it. She told herself repeatedly that whatever doubts or exhaustion she felt were just passing storms. Everyone felt overwhelmed sometimes, didn't they? But underneath the surface, cracks had begun to form. Laura felt Peter pulling away emotionally. He no longer looked at her the way he used to. He didn't ask about her day. Nights at the dinner table were filled with silence, broken only by the chatter of the children. Laura sometimes caught herself watching Peter when he wasn't looking, searching his face for any sign of the man she had fallen in love with. But all she saw was a stranger. Yet she kept these thoughts locked inside. After all, life had to go on. The pressure Laura carried was invisible to everyone, even herself. She worked overtime shifts to cover mounting bills, but never mentioned it to Peter. She handled the children's needs, school activities, housework, and meals without asking for help. She had always prided herself on being strong. Asking for support felt like admitting defeat. Slowly, that strength transformed into isolation. Despite her inner struggles, there was no indication of danger. Laura didn't yell at her children. She didn't lash out at Peter. She kept moving forward, day after day, shift after shift, smile after smile. To everyone around her, she was fine. But everything changed on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It was raining that day as Laura waited outside Emily's school in her old silver sedan. She watched parents chatting, children laughing, umbrellas dotting the sidewalk like colorful flowers. When Emily climbed into the back seat, soaking wet but smiling, Lovra felt a moment of genuine warmth. This was the part of her life that still felt real, those small moments with her children at home. Emily tossed her backpack onto the couch as usual and ran off to play with Jake. Lovra, operating on autopilot, picked up the bag to check for any school papers or homework. It was a simple routine, something she did every day without thought. But this time, her hand brushed against something strange at the bottom of the bag, a small folded piece of paper, hidden under textbooks and loose pencils. At first, she assumed it was a simple note from Emily's teacher. But as she unfolded it, her entire world shifted in an instant. The handwriting was clumsy, clearly written by a child. But the words were unmistakable. Her heart pounded as she read them. "Mommy, why does Daddy lock me in the basement at night when you're at work? Please don't be mad at me for telling." Time stopped. The note trembled in her shaking hands. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her mind raced. This had to be a mistake. Some misunderstanding. But the words were there, staring back at her. Fear, confusion, and rage collided inside her like a storm. She replayed every night she had spent at the hospital, every shift she had trusted Peter to watch the children. How could she have missed something so horrible? Why hadn't Emily said anything before? Why was Peter acting so normal? Lovra sat on the couch for hours, unable to move, unable to think straight. Every glance at Peter now felt sinister. Every smile from him seemed like a lie. Her home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison filled with secrets. As night fell, Lovra didn't confront Peter. She didn't speak to Emily about the note. Instead, she watched them silently, her mind unraveling. Her exhaustion, her doubts, her fears, all of it now focused on one terrifying thought. She had failed to protect her children. And in that moment, something inside Lovra Thompson began to break. Lovra didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room in complete silence, the note clutched in her hand long after its words had burned themselves into her mind. She watched the clock tick minute by minute, listening to the sounds of her family breathing upstairs. Each sound that once comforted her now filled her with dread. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift in Peter's weight as he moved in bed, sounded like evidence of something darker. Her mind refused to rest. Over and over, she asked herself the same question. Could Peter really have done this? By morning, Lovra felt like she was moving through a dream. She avoided looking Peter in the eyes as he made coffee and chatted about the weather. His voice, once familiar, sounded hollow to her now. She watched him interact with the children, laughing and playing, and every smile he gave them felt like a performance. She saw no love there anymore, only deception. She tried to tell herself she was wrong, that her exhaustion and stress were warping her thinking. But the note in her pocket told her otherwise. Lara didn't confront Peter. Instead, she acted normal. She packed Emily's lunch, dressed Jake for daycare, and pretended her life hadn't just collapsed overnight. But inside, something terrifying was building. She began seeing Peter as a predator living inside her home. Her mind started filling in gaps, constructing memories that may or may not have existed. Had Emily looked more tired recently? Had Jake cried when Peter tried to pick him up last week? Every small moment, every little behavior, suddenly seemed like proof of something sinister. Later that afternoon, while Peter was at work, Lovra searched the house. She went straight to the basement. It was clean, nothing out of place storage. Boxes, old toys, holiday decorations. But Lovra didn't trust what she saw. She felt certain that Peter had cleaned up whatever he had been hiding. She inspected the walls, the floor, even the small locked cabinet in the corner. She found nothing unusual, but that only deepened her suspicion. In her mind, Peter was always 2 steps ahead. He was careful. He knew how to hide his crimes. By the time Peter returned home, Laura had convinced herself of one undeniable truth. Her husband was a danger to their children, and no one else could see it but her. She considered calling the police, but stopped herself. What if they didn't believe her? She had no evidence beyond the note. Peter was respected in town. People liked him. What if the police asked Emily and she stayed silent out of fear? Laura couldn't risk it. If Peter discovered she had gone to the police, what would he do then? The more Laura thought about it, the more she convinced herself that the system would fail her. She began to believe that she alone had the strength to protect her children. Laura's paranoia grew quietly. She observed everything Peter did, every movement, every glance. She no longer saw him as a husband, but as a threat hiding in plain sight. And slowly, another belief began taking root in her mind. A belief that, to keep her children safe, she might have to act first. Over the next few days, Laura's world narrowed to a single focus: protecting Emily and Jake from Peter. She stopped speaking to friends. She avoided answering texts from her sister. She limited her conversations with neighbors. She retreated deeper into herself, constructing walls no one could break through. Her life became a performance. She smiled when she had to. She nodded at Peter's words. But behind her eyes, fear and fury burned brighter with every passing. Laura started planning without realizing she was planning. She found herself taking small steps that felt natural at the time. She withdrew cash from the ATM over several days. She began setting aside medication from the hospital: sleeping pills, strong sedatives. She didn't consciously admit to herself why she was doing it. It just felt like preparation, like insurance. She told herself that if things got worse, she'd be ready. In her mind, Peter was no longer human. He was a monster disguised as a man. And no one could see it but her. She watched Emily more closely, desperate for any further signs. She wanted Emily to say something, to tell her more. But Emily remained quiet, cheerful, completely unaware of her mother's growing terror. That silence, Laura believed, was fear. In Laura's mind, Emily's happiness was fake, a mask hiding her suffering. Laura saw signs that weren't there. She misread every smile, every giggle, as evidence of trauma. She believed Emily was too scared to tell the truth. By the end of the week, Laura no longer trusted anyone. She didn't trust Peter. She didn't trust the police. She didn't trust friends or family. She barely trusted herself, but she believed she was the only one capable of saving her children. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. While preparing dinner one night, Laura looked over at her family gathered around the television. Peter sat on the couch, Jake curled up next to him. Emily laughed at a cartoon. In that moment, Laura didn't see a family. She saw victims waiting for their turn. And she saw herself as their last hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to think the unthinkable. If Peter was the source of danger, removing him was the only solution. But her thoughts didn't stop there. Laura's fear twisted even darker. What if Peter's corruption had already touched the children? What if they were broken inside, damaged beyond repair by whatever he had done? What if the world itself was too cruel for them to survive in? Laura's mind spiraled into terrifying conclusions. She believed she had one terrible choice left to make, and in her mind, it was the only act of mercy she could offer. The days passed, but for Laura, time had lost all meaning. Her thoughts were consumed by one endless loop of fear and planning. She watched Peter constantly, analyzing his every move. Each time he laughed with Emily or carried Jake upstairs, she felt her stomach twist with dread. What looked like love to everyone else, Laura saw as manipulation. She convinced herself that Peter's kindness was nothing but a mask, a way to keep the children silent about whatever horrors he was inflicting upon them when she wasn't there. Every small act of fatherhood became, in Laura's eyes, a calculated performance. At night, while Peter slept beside her, Laura lay awake. She would stare at the ceiling, playing out endless scenarios in her mind. What if she confronted him? Would he hurt her? Would he take the children and disappear? What if he turned the police against her, painting her as unstable or delusional? She thought about Emily's note again and again, the words burning into her mind, feeding her paranoia. She wanted to ask Emily about the note directly, but fear stopped her. What if Peter had threatened her not to speak? What if asking would only scare her daughter more? The silence between them felt heavier than any words. She told herself that her daughter was depending on her, even if Emily didn't say so out loud. Laura believed Emily was silently crying for help, and every moment Laura hesitated. She was failing as a mother. One evening, Laura found herself standing in the kitchen long after everyone had gone to bed, staring at the small bottle of sleeping pills she had hidden behind the coffee cans. She picked it up and turned it over in her hand. She knew exactly how much to use to make someone unconscious without immediately ending their life. It was knowledge she never thought she'd use, but now it felt necessary. She wasn't thinking clearly anymore. Every thought was warped by the overwhelming belief that Peter was dangerous and that time was running out. The next morning, Laura started quietly putting her plan together. She withdrew more cash, enough to disappear if she had to. She checked the locks on the doors repeatedly, paranoid that Peter would somehow find out and stop her. She told herself she needed a backup plan, just in case. She even considered running away with the children, but then the darker thoughts crept in. What if Peter followed? What if he found them, no matter where they hid? The idea of living in constant fear, always looking over her shoulder, seemed unbearable. Laura's paranoia grew more intense with every passing day. She stopped calling her sister. She ignored her best friend's messages. She avoided neighbors crossing the street when she saw them approaching. She didn't want anyone questioning her, interfering with her plan. She felt completely alone, trapped in a world where every smile was a threat, every word a lie. She started collecting more sedatives from the hospital, under the guise of needing them for patients. She hid them carefully in the house. She checked her hiding spots multiple times a day, terrified that Peter might find them and realize what she was planning. She convinced herself that he was watching her, that he suspected she knew the truth. Every accidental glance from him felt loaded with hidden meaning. Every conversation felt like a test. One afternoon, Laura caught Peter watching her from the doorway as she packed Emily's lunch. She froze, her heart racing. His expression was blank, neutral, but to Laura, it looked sinister. Was he planning something too? Did he know she was on to him? When he finally walked away without saying anything, Laura felt certain the time to act was running out. That night, while Peter was in the shower, Laura went to the children's room. She watched them sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm building around them. Emily's small face was relaxed, innocent. Jake clutched his stuffed animal tightly. Laura felt tears burning her eyes. Her children deserved better than this. They deserved safety, peace, freedom from fear. In that moment, Laura's thoughts twisted even darker. What if the only way to protect them wasn't to save them, but to release them? She hated herself for thinking it, but the idea took root. If Peter had already broken them beyond repair, if life itself was too dangerous, too painful, maybe she could spare them from what was coming. She told herself that ending their suffering would be an act of love. In her delusional state, it made sense. Over the next few days, Laura's plan solidified. She told herself she would do it quickly, carefully, without pain. She convinced herself it was the kindest thing she could offer. She avoided looking in the mirror. She no longer recognized the person she had become. But in her mind, she wasn't the villain. She was a mother doing what no one else had the courage to do. Protect her children from a world too cruel to save them. Peter remained oblivious to her crumbling mind. He continued with their routine, smiling, laughing, talking about weekend plans. But to Lavra, every word he spoke was poison. She saw his affection for the children as a sick game. Her hatred for him consumed her. He was the enemy. And soon, she would have to stop him. Lavra began rehearsing the night in her mind. She knew when Peter fell deepest asleep. She knew which meal he liked best and how to hide the sedatives inside. She planned each step in detail, down to what clothes she would wear, how she would clean up afterward, where she would dispose of evidence. Every moment of her day was dedicated to perfecting her plan. She waited patiently for the right moment, and when it came, she would be ready. The day Lavra had chosen felt ordinary to everyone else, but to her, it carried the weight of finality. The house smelled of home-cooked food, sunlight poured through the windows, and the children's laughter echoed through the halls. Lavra moved through the motions like a shadow, her face calm, her actions practiced. Inside her mind, she had already crossed the line where there was no turning back. She told herself repeatedly that what she was about to do was not evil, it was necessary. Dinner was simple, Peter's favorite. She made sure to act lovingly, smiling at him, serving his plate herself. She slipped the crushed sedatives into his food with trembling fingers, careful not to use too much. Her nursing knowledge assured her it would be enough to make him weak, slow, vulnerable. She watched as he ate, her heart pounding with each bite he took. She spoke softly to the children as she watched her husband unknowingly drift toward unconsciousness. To Lavra, every forkful he swallowed was a victory, every slow blink from him a sign that justice was nearing. After dinner, Peter yawned more than usual. He rubbed his eyes, commented on how tired he felt. Lavra nodded, pretending concern, suggesting he should rest early. He agreed, his voice thick, unaware that his body was already betraying him. When Peter went upstairs to lie down, Lavra waited exactly 20 minutes. She cleaned the kitchen. With mechanical precision, every movement deliberate. When she finally turned off the faucet and stood in silence, she felt the gravity of what was about to happen settle on her shoulders. But doubt did not come, only certainty. She climbed the stairs slowly, gripping the kitchen knife tightly in her hand. She passed Emily's bedroom, then Jake's. Both children slept soundly, protected for now. In her mind, she had to finish the first part before anything else. In the bedroom, Peter lay sprawled across the bed, half asleep, barely conscious. From the drugs. Lavra stood over him for several minutes, her mind frozen. She remembered their wedding, their first home, the birth of their children. But those memories didn't soften her heart. They hardened her resolve. She believed this man had stolen everything from her, destroyed their family from within. In her delusional world, he wasn't her husband anymore. He was the monster. With no warning, she attacked. The knife plunged into his chest once, twice, then again and again. Peter never had a chance to resist. His eyes opened for a brief moment, but confusion overtook terror. Lavra stabbed him relentlessly, fueled by years of silent resentment, paranoia, and fear. The white bedsheets turned red. She didn't stop until Peter's body lay motionless, the room silent except for her ragged breathing. Her hands shook. Blood splattered across her face and clothes. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She felt nothing. Lavra left the bedroom and walked back down the hall, stepping carefully over drops of blood trailing from the knife still clutched in her hand. She paused outside Emily's bedroom door. Her daughter's peaceful breathing reached her ears. Soft and steady, Lavra hesitated. She felt her mind slipping, battling itself. Somewhere deep inside, her instincts screamed that what she was planning was wrong. But those voices were faint, drowned beneath the delusion that this was mercy. She entered the children's bedroom. Emily and Jake slept side by side that night, having begged to share the bed. Laura stood over them, watching, frozen by the enormity of what she believed she had to do. She crouched beside Jake first. He looked so small, so fragile. She considered using the knife but couldn't bear the thought. She chose the pillow instead. Gently, carefully, she placed it over Jake's face. He stirred slightly, a soft whimper escaping him. Laura pressed down, her heart breaking, her tears falling silently as she whispered apologies in her mind. It felt endless. When Jake finally stopped moving, Laura sat back, shaking violently, barely able to breathe. Emily was next. Laura looked at her daughter's innocent face, remembering all the bedtime stories, all the small notes packed in school lunches, all the hugs after bad dreams. Her vision blurred. She stood frozen, unable to move. But then, the image of the note flashed in her mind again. The words that had started this nightmare echoed inside her. In Laura's fractured reality, Emily was already suffering. She believed. Sparing her from future pain was the only act of love left. With trembling hands, she repeated the process. Emily never woke up. Afterwards, Laura sat on the bedroom floor, covered in blood and tears, staring at the lifeless bodies of her children. She waited for grief to come, for horror to hit her like a wave. But it didn't. Her mind was too far gone. She only felt empty. For what felt like hours, Laura remained there, silent and motionless. Eventually, she stood up and changed out of her blood-soaked clothes. She washed her hands and face, moving as if she were preparing for work. She packed a small bag cash, medicine, her nursing ID badge. She left the knife behind, lying on the bedroom floor beside Peter's body. She stepped outside into the cool night, locking the door behind her out of habit. Laura drove aimlessly, the streets of Cedar Falls blurring past her. She didn't know where she was going, somewhere far, somewhere safe. Her mind replayed memories, not of the murders, but of happy moments. Family dinners, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. Her brain protected her from the horror she had created, locking it behind the walls of delusion. Hours later, her body gave up. She crashed the car into a tree just outside of town. When emergency responders found her, she was sitting behind the wheel, dazed, murmuring words no one could understand. She didn't resist arrest. She didn't ask about her family. She simply whispered over and over, "They're safe now." In Laura's mind, she had saved them. The aftermath of the Thompson family murder sent shockwaves through Cedar Falls. In a town where everyone believed they knew their neighbors, the horrifying truth was impossible to comprehend. Peter Thompson, a respected father and friend, lay dead in his own home. His two children, Emily and Jake, were found in their shared bed, lifeless. And Laura, the woman everyone believed to be a caring mother and devoted nurse, was in custody, her face blank, her mind seemingly lost. When police first entered the Thompson residence, the scene was far worse than anything they had prepared for. Blood trailed from the master bedroom down the hallway to the children's room. Peter's body showed evidence of a frenzied, prolonged attack. The children, however, appeared untouched beyond what the autopsy would later confirm death by smothering. It was as if Laura, in her delusion, had spared them the violence she unleashed upon her husband. Detectives immediately began searching for answers. Why had Laura killed her family? Why had no one noticed signs of trouble? In the days that followed her arrest, she offered no explanation. She sat silently in the interrogation room, occasionally whispering to herself, repeating the same chilling phrase, "They're safe now." Attention turned to the single piece of evidence Laura carried with her, Emily's handwritten note. Folded neatly and hidden in her coat pocket, the note raised more questions than answers. Investigators hoped it would unlock the mystery behind Laura's actions. Forensic experts examined the note carefully. The handwriting appeared childlike, but something felt wrong. Experts in document analysis were brought in to assess its origin. The conclusion they reached changed the direction of the investigation entirely. The note wasn't written by Emily. The loops of the letters, the inconsistent pressure of the pencil marks, the subtle tremors in the strokes all pointed toward an adult hand attempting to mimic a child's writing. Psychological experts were called in to analyze what this meant. Over time, a chilling theory emerged. Laura herself had written the note. At some point before the murders, Laura's mind had fractured. Overwhelmed by exhaustion, paranoia, and untreated mental illness, she had created the note as a form of evidence for a reality that didn't exist. Whether she consciously faked it or produced it during a psychotic break remained unclear. But what was certain was that the note served as a catalyst in her spiraling delusion. Investigators dug deeper into Laura's life. Her co-workers at the hospital described her as quiet but competent. However, several noted she seemed more withdrawn in recent months. Friends recalled unanswered calls, canceled playdates, and the growing sense that Laura was isolating herself. Peter's co-workers reported no signs of distress in his life. There were no financial troubles beyond the normal strains of raising a family. Peter had no criminal record, no history of violence, no complaints of abuse from neighbors, friends, or family. In short, there was no logical reason for what Laura had done. When police questioned Emily's teachers, they confirmed the same. Emily had never mentioned anything strange at home. There were no bruises, no signs of fear, no late-night calls. Emily had been a cheerful, bright student. Nothing in her behavior indicated that she had been suffering in silence. As the evidence unfolded, the picture became disturbingly clear. Laura's descent had happened quietly, without warning. Even she hadn't realized it. Her paranoia had fed itself in isolation, unchecked by outside voices. The note, which she believed to be a cry for help from her daughter, had likely been created during a dissociative episode, a tangible product of her delusions. It became the proof her fractured mind needed to justify her belief that Peter was harming their children. From that moment on, every smile, every routine interaction, transformed into perceived manipulation and lies. Laura's mental state was so far deteriorated that she no longer differentiated between imagined threats and reality. In court, Laura was deemed unfit to stand trial. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with a severe psychotic disorder compounded by years of untreated depression and anxiety. She was transferred to a high-security psychiatric facility where she would remain indefinitely. She showed no remorse, but not out of cruelty. Rather, she remained trapped in her delusional world, convinced. Back in Cedar Falls, the community struggled to make sense of the tragedy. Peter's funeral was attended by hundreds. His family, devastated, refused to speak to the media. They could not understand how the woman they had welcomed into their lives had killed not only their son but also their grandchildren. Friends placed flowers and toys outside the Thompson house, which stood empty, silent, its windows darkened, a painful reminder of what had been lost. The house was eventually sold to a distant buyer, but rumors lingered. Children in the neighborhood whispered that it was haunted. Adults avoided speaking of it altogether. Cedar Falls, once a town defined by trust and neighborly warmth, became a place marked by unease. As for Laura, her days followed a simple pattern inside the psychiatric hospital. She spoke softly to herself, sometimes staring out the window for hours. She would occasionally ask if her children were safe. When told they were, she smiled faintly and returned to her silence. The reality of what she had done never broke through her mind's defenses. She lived inside the world she had created. A world where she was a hero, a mother who saved her children from something far worse. Her story became a cautionary tale whispered in true crime forums, dissected in psychological studies, and told on podcasts and documentaries. But for those who knew the Thompsons, it wasn't just a story. It was a wound that never healed. And somewhere, locked in her own mind, Laura Thompson still believed she had done the right thing. Months passed after the tragedy. Yet Cedar Falls remained haunted by what had unfolded inside the Thompson house. The once cheerful suburban streets now carried an invisible shadow, where whispers replaced conversations and glances of suspicion replaced waves of greeting. The house itself stood empty, its windows boarded, its walls holding silence deeper. Then grief. No one wanted to pass by it, yet no one could ignore its presence. It had become a symbol of fear, a reminder that horror could bloom in the most ordinary places. Inside the psychiatric hospital, Lavra Thompson lived in a world no one else could enter. Each day was the same. She woke at dawn, sat quietly during meals, and spent hours staring out of the barred windows. Nurses noted how calm she appeared, how peaceful she looked. But her mind was locked in the same loop that had driven her to destroy her family. She still believed that her children were alive. She still believed she had saved them. When psychiatrists spoke with her, Lavra smiled softly, asking if Emily and Jake were doing well. She didn't ask about Peter. To her, he no longer existed. Her mind had erased the memory of her husband, preserving only the twisted belief that she had rescued her children from his imagined cruelty. When told her children were safe, she nodded contentedly, completely unaware of the truth. Her mind refused to accept reality. Meanwhile, Detective Rachel Morris carried the weight of the case long after the paperwork was filed. She had solved dozens of cases, but this one never left her. She replayed it constantly, the broken woman, the staged note, the quiet house soaked in blood. Morris wondered how many other mothers like Laura walked unseen among their neighbors, their minds unraveling behind closed doors. While everyone else assumed life was normal. Back in Cedar Falls, Sophie Carter, Laura's best friend, still blamed herself. She remembered the unanswered messages, the calls that went straight to voicemail. She remembered feeling something was wrong but pushing it aside, thinking Lavra was just busy. Now she carried that guilt with her everywhere. She rarely spoke about Lara anymore. Her own home, once filled with laughter, now felt too quiet. The Thompson family tragedy was discussed on crime documentaries, analyzed in psychology lectures, and dissected in online forums. But for those who knew the family, none of it mattered. The theories, the explanations, the expert opinions, they were all just noise. What mattered was the simple, brutal truth. 3 lives were stolen. Not by a monster, but by a mother who loved them in a way twisted by fear. And every morning, in her locked hospital room, Lavra Thompson woke up believing she was a hero.